Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 3DO Experience, the 3DO retrospective podcast where we talk about all things 3DO, the 3DO company, and everything in between. I am Bill, and this is Threk. How you doing, Threk?
Oh, I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Had kind of a shitty day. My voice probably is a little fucked up because of some reasons, but other than that, I'm doing all right.
Well, hopefully I'll do most of the talking today. Like today it was the first of the month, so now I have to start. So now my week's probably going to be a lot more busy at work, but that's fine with me.
Hmm.
So still had some downtime. Enjoyed the 3-day weekend. That was nice. Watched some movies, played some games, took some naps, just kind of relaxed for that Labor Day week. I hope everyone else out there had a good Labor Day weekend. I think we all needed the 3 days.
I took more naps than I thought I would this weekend. Like there were
You have the free
multiple
time.
points, and there was like multiple points where I was like just chilling on my couch, and then like the next thing I know, it was like 4 hours later. I was like, "Oh fuck."
Yeah, but I got a really good night's sleep last night, so that helped quite a bit. And yes, and to update from last week, I don't know if I showed them off last week, but I got my new Game Gear with this really nice aftermarket blue shell. It's not the same blue shell that the originals had. It's more of like a kind of like a baby blue,
Mm.
but it looks really nice and it works very well. Though I keep it plugged in, I don't bother with the batteries. And I now have almost 20 games for the boy. So for our non-audio listeners, I am showing, or for audio listeners, I have the here. Here's your Game Gear ASMR. So with all the classics like Sonic, Columns, Madden '95, The Lion King. I even have a game called where is it? Sports Trivia Championship Edition, which is sports trivia, but it's set up like a football game. There's a breakout clone called Woody Pop, which actually isn't too bad. There's a game called Tasmania that I cannot seem to figure out. I die on the first level every time.
That's just like
Uh,
the Tasmanian Devil game for Game Boy Color that I could never
yeah,
figure out how to
there's
play.
another one. It's like Escape from Mars or something. And for some reason, there's a series of games called Poker Face Paul. There's like blackjack, poker, gin, solitaire. I have the blackjack and the solitaire, and I've been playing them, and I'm like, these could have just been in one cart. Why are these all split up? Trying to see what else. Oh, Jurassic Park, which was pretty cool. Bill heard me beat that the other day.
That was the best call ever. I'm on a treadmill. Matt's playing Fable, and you were playing Game Gear.
Game Gear, and then I started talking about the woke game list that I found, or that Dre found, and I was passing along. I do have a game that you'd probably like, a GP Rider. It's like a motorcycle racing game.
Nice.
It's not bad. It's actually not too bad. And me being me, I have Echo.
Nice.
So if you guys haven't yet, go over to the Superpod Network and read my blog on Echo the Dolphin, Defender of the Future for the Dreamcast, because I do a whole thing on it. It's pretty long, but anytime I write an article, it's going to be long.
Nice.
And I was talking to somebody on Twitter called, I think it was Insane Mega CD Facts, about the 3DO. Like we started talking about this. They reference, I think it was like the Gold Star one, and then I was telling them about how like unreliable it is, and I guess their FC1 it doesn't read discs, so I think their lasers crapped out. But
FC1s tend to go after a while. So
yeah, that's why I told them. I'm like, if you don't want to do that, just get a Japanese FC10. They're
yeah,
pretty cheap, and you'll be fine. But maybe they're listening. I don't know.
maybe. I mean, at some point, I really want once the OEDs get kind of more common and like usable for 3DO. I really want to put one in my FC1 just because I love the FC1, but my disk drive is definitely going.
Yeah, like it's aesthetically the coolest looking of the bunch, but it is the least reliable.
I think
Or
Casey.
or what was you gonna say?
So I think our friend of the show Casey, he referred to it as the Castle console, which kind of.
Yeah, I could see that.
They're apparently the second most unreliable ones, just
I think
because
I think it's the Gold Star that are worse.
the Gold Stars were unreliable from the get go. The FC1s are actually they're arguably the best built, but the lasers they were the Gen 1 lasers, so they tend to crap out the quickest.
Yeah.
Basically, all the moving parts and shit. It kind of like after a while they start to go.
It's unfortunate. It's kind of the same thing with the Game Gear, because the when the Game Gear was around, like that's when like bad capacitors were really running wild. So that's why if you try to buy a Game Gear, most likely it either doesn't work or it's been like the capacitors have been swapped out so it actually works. Or as they like to say, recapped. That's what they say in the streets. So
Yeah.
so if you want to, and that's the issue with the Game Gear, is like really the hardware is sort of the barrier of entry. Once you get that figured out, you're kind of good to go. So
Yeah, because games are dirt cheap for the most part.
yeah, there are some that have gotten expensive, but it's not terrible, you know.
See, people give them crap nowadays just because Game Boy was such an unstoppable force, but
I mean, it
Sega,
was.
yeah, but Sega made some really awesome handhelds.
Yeah, like the Game Gear is a very solid machine. I just think its screen isn't the best. As somebody who spent more time with it, the screen isn't great, but it's usable. It's just I'm constantly altering the brightness, depending on where I'm sitting and if I have any natural light coming in and all that. And it does strain the eyes a little bit, but
It has a good ghosting issue. Ghosting's pretty
oh
common with it.
god, that's very apparent. But you kind of get used to it as you go along. And yeah, the battery life was terrible on it at the time. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I mean, if I was around at the time, I would have had a Game Gear because that's just me, and I would have had batteries in it to say like, if I was still in like high school, I would have it for that. But then when I'd come home, I just plug in the wall, just play it,
Oh yeah.
you know.
I think with retro handhelds, most people just plug them in at this point because it's just so easier.
Exactly. I don't think. Can you plug in a Game Boy?
You can plug in the originals. There are DC like ins on like the color and stuff, but I don't know what adapter they use because it isn't
Okay.
like a convenient one like you can with most of the other ones.
Yeah, and I know by like the GBA, any of those are like proprietary, so you can't just get a whatever. I mean, to be fair, with my Game Gear, it takes like that DC 9 volt, but it's like that really specific size,
It's
you know.
thankfully it's the same one as the Genesis/Master System.
Yeah, and the guy I bought it from, he gave me a DC 9 to USB for this guy, so I could just plug him in, which was very nice, very 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 nifty.
My
So
f-
thank you. So thank you on that, whoever. I can't remember the name of the guy who sold it to me, but thank you.
my
It's a
favorite
nice product.
my favorite one is the Neo Geo Pocket Color because the power cord I have for that thing is from like some kid's play toy thing. It just happens to work.
Hey, if it works, it works.
I was like looking for like a proper adapter at like a secondhand store, and the exact one that like the Neo Geo Pocket Color needed, I found one, but it was like it was like some Fisher Price thing. I'm like, it works.
Funnily enough, I'm looking at the guy I bought the Game Gear from. His name is Sean Solo, and the only thing on his storefront is another Game Gear, like the exact one, but he is charging way more for it than I bought. I got mine apparently on a deal, so but he's charging a bit more for this one. But he does good work. But that's kind of the issue with the Game Gear. If you buy a recapped one, it's about like somewhere between 100 and 140 ish bucks. If you want a new IPS screen, that bumps it to like $300.
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
my
like
my
IPS
note.
screens aren't even that expensive. It might just be it's a very specific size.
It's that and it's the labor. It takes a bit of work.
Yeah, yeah. So I like if you're willing to put up with that screen, get a recapped one, pay a little more for it, and you'll make it up on the back end with the games because there's a lot. Like even the pricier games are like $40, which isn't terrible. Like I've been, I'm hunting down my best to see what are the more pricier ones, and I'm noticing like retro stores, a lot of them are kind of varied. Like there's one I went to where it's like the guy knows what he has, so he kind of ups everything decent amount. There's one that is pretty good on prices, so they're like within kind of price charting range, but they all make sense. And then I went to another one that I don't think they really knew, so a lot of them were just like really really cheap,
Oh yeah,
which
I've
was
noticed that.
awesome. Those are my
I've
favorite.
I've noticed with a lot of stores, like Game Gear stuff sells so infrequently that a lot of the times they don't even give a shit and they'll just like price them at like barely anything just in case, just to get rid of them because nobody like ever comes in. I've noticed a lot.
Yeah. There's one of those stores has a really good copy of Super Return of the Jedi, which had a Game Gear port for some fucking reason. And I think they're asking about 25, maybe 30 for it. So I'm probably going to go back there and grab that one, because there's another one, the other store that knows what they have. They have like for like $60. And I'm like, it
Yeah.
ain't $60. You ain't DK Oldies. Get out of here.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, DK Oldies.
I've been considered, well, with DK Oldies, I remember I bought a bunch of like cheap ass GBA games from them that weren't worth anything, and they were fine. So I might do that again with them, but like get like the real cheapy Game Gear games that aren't really worth anything, and they'll probably be fine.
Yeah.
You know, so like DK Oldies, basically, if you want a complete collection of a particular console and that has some dirt cheap games, get those from them. Get the dirt cheap ones. Anything that's like worth anything, don't bother at all.
Yeah. It's more the consoles than anything, because they don't upkeep their consoles at all.
Yeah, the prices they have for like Game Gears as well is ridiculous. Like they want like $230 for one, and there was no guarantee that it's recapped or been cleaned up in any way. So yeah, do not buy a Game Gear from them. But if you want World Series baseball for $2, that's about right. Go for that, which I have. Where is it? Where is it? There he is. But anyways, we're not here to talk about fucking Sega for a third goddamn week in a row.
Nope.
Though I will be bringing them up again later.
Oh yeah, because they tangentially related to the topic of this game.
A little bit.
So we had mentioned it in the previous 2 episodes, but for this episode, we're actually going to be talking about Demolition Man.
This was at my request. As you can see, I have the long box, which is basically just the movie poster. And yours is like the cropped version of the movie poster, but it's the same image.
I'm actually kind of interested, because I have a feeling this jewel case is just a jewel case that they found, because your version there, I'm pretty sure the manual, they just took that manual, stuck it in a jewel case, because there's no back or anything, or side spine.
There's a few CD only or dual case only 3DO games I have that are like the exact same thing. So that's probably what they did, because my guess is the long box just probably wore out. But as you can see, for the audio listeners, I have the long box of Demolition Man, and it is one of those kind of clamshell designs where there's the little spot in the center for you to open it, and then the disc sits in like this weird sort of like plasticky center thing. It's similar to, was it Jurassic Park Interactive that had the similar to this?
Jurassic Park and Way of the Warrior.
Yeah, they had this kind of design to them, which is nice. It's a shame this part is blank. Like this ain't a PS5 game. Let me see something.
It's but like
but this is like, this long box I have is a very good quality. Like you can tell this was like, the corners are clean, like there's no scuffs on it. So whoever had this took really, really nice care of it.
It's very much the it's like the cheaper variation of like the nice like EA style like clamshell ones.
Yeah. But those tend to wear out faster, I think, than these guys. Like they need a little bit more work to keep them clean, but I mean, I like how it looks. And also I like the poster for Demolition Man.
Yeah, it is cool. It's an iconic image, I will say.
It is. Because obviously this is based on the movie that was released in 1993 that was sort of seen as a sort of a comeback a bit for Mr. Sylvester Stallone. Because the late 80s, he was struggling a bit. Like, I think it was after Rocky 4 is when his career, like, we got like Cobra, Stop Him and Almost Shoot.
I thought it was Rocky 5 was the one that was really bad.
Well, Rocky 4 was like like it was after Rocky 4 his career started to slag, is what I meant. Yeah, Rocky 5, it is the worst of the bunch, but I don't think it's as bad as some people make it out to be. But, you know, that's a whole nother topic. But as I was saying, based on the movie, so for funsies, on the 3-day weekend, I actually watched the movie. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie.
I've seen it, but it's been a long time. Honestly, I should have watched it this weekend. I just was doing a lot of shit.
Before, I had seen it in like clips, you know, just kind of little bits over the years. But for this, I was like, you know what? Let me just sit down and watch it. I have the free time. So I did. And my opinion on the movie, that could be a whole nother podcast, I think, because there's a lot to say about the movie because it's definitely one of the better Sylvester Stallone movies. It's not one of my personal favorites. Like honestly, I'd rather watch like Over the Top. I don't know if you've ever
Mm.
seen that one. That one's it's like the weird one where he's like an arm wrestling like competition. Like that movie's kind of awesome in its own weird way. But Demolition Man, it has a legacy to it. And a lot
Mm.
of that is just like how the movie like predicted the future. I'm using heavy quotes with that because there are certain things about it that are very interesting with like the no physical contact and like the VR sex scene and some other like weird stuff in there. And the infamous three seashells.
That's my favorite scene in the movie. Hey guys, he doesn't know about the three seashells.
Which is like weirdly enough this movie's legacy is people going what the hell are the three seashells, and there's many different theories, some more gross than others.
Yeah.
um Personally I think it's probably just like a bidet thing, like they're just three buttons for a bidet and they're not marked because like I mean a toilet's not marked, a sink's not marked, like you go in a bathroom you just know what they are kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That would be my guess. I'm not sure, but it's a weird movie. Like, but I think Stallone does an okay job. Wesley Snipes is hamming it up. You can
Yeah.
tell he's having a good time. But really, the standout performance was Sandra Bullock. I
yeah.
fucking loved her in this movie. It was so good. Like, just how she was able to be that sort of naive, like futuristic cop who has an obsession with the 20th century, but now that it's like right in front of her face, she doesn't really know how to handle it. And her like dealing with the language, like when they go down the sewer and she just says, "Hey, let's blow this guy," and Stallone has to say, "No, let's like blow him up or whatever,"
I
like
still love the.
like she killed it. Like honestly, it's my favorite performance of hers that I've seen, and I've watched Miss Congeniality more than I think people would assume. I mean, I've seen stuff like wasn't she in? Yeah, she was in The Blind
Yeah.
Side and all that.
That was how
And
she got her Emmy. It was the blind
yeah,
side.
her Academy Award, her Oscar. Emmys are for TV.
I mean, her performance in The Blind Side is phenomenal.
Yes, but unfortunately, that movie's kind of been tainted now. But we don't have to get into that. But I loved her in this, and just it's a movie that it succeeds in having really great world building. And really like that's what makes really good sci-fi work is that sort of world building and establishing the rules, even if they're kind of inconsistent because it's a 90s action movie. Certain things that they keep up with are really cool, like the Taco Bell stuff is great. Though for some reason the version of the movie I watched overdubbed Taco Bell with Pizza Hut. I have no idea why. Legitimately no idea why. But I know it was Taco Bell. If somebody knows why, that might be like a rights thing. But still, why have one over the other? I think Taco Bell's a better fit, anyways. Lord knows I wouldn't mind a burrito. But I don't know. I could go on about the movie, but I think it's a very solid action flick.
I still
and was a big success at the time. It's better than Cliffhanger.
Yeah. I do love the scene though, like the resolution to the three seashells where he finds the machine that prints out the tickets every time he swears. So he just swears at the machine until he gets a bunch of tickets. And he's like, "Yep, I'll see you in a minute."
That is pretty good. And then like the final line in the movie when he's walking away with Sandra Bullock, he's like, "So what exactly are the three seashells?"
Yeah.
But yeah,
the world may never know.
Yeah. So it's definitely a movie that's worth watching. If you're curious to it, if you have a fondness for science fiction and just over the top 90s action films where there's a lot of like, oh fuck, who directed Schumacher? It has like a Joel Schumacher vibe with like some of the futuristic sets and the lighting and kind of like the gaudiness of it, but it's not over the top like say like Batman Forever. But if you have an appreciation for that, but want to see Sylvester Stallone beat the shit out of Wesley Snipes, it's worth watching. It was a fun movie. It's not either guy's best performance, but it was solid.
See, when I think cheesy 90s action, it like for some reason the two movies that always come to mind are this one or which is the good movie. And then when I think of the bad cheesy 90s movie, I always think of that damn movie Hulk Hogan was in. The
Thunder in Paradise? No, that was a TV show.
The one it was like him and Christopher Lloyd, I think.
Suburban Commando.
Suburban Commando.
I pulled that out of my ass.
The only reason I remember that goddamn movie is the famous like I was frozen,
today. Yeah.
Like that and just Hulk Hogan.
I mean, Christopher
Lloyd
actor carries that movie on his shoulders. Yeah. He's so good.
Because Hulk Hogan's not a great actor.
I mean, Hulk Hogan's not a great person in general.
Fair.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually saw something about him today. It was related to him talking about Chris Benoit. I guess it was like they were saying like, you know, oh, people have said a lot of like bad things about you. And he's like, oh, what do they know? They've forgiven Chris Benoit. And it's like, and no.
Different situation.
There are people who will never forgive Chris Benoit for what he did. And there are people who just flat out never cared in the first place.
Yeah.
That's it. So, but we're not here to debate that. So back to Demolition Man. It was a great movie. And of course, like every big movie at the time, it had a video game tie-in. And it felt like this was the era where the video game tie-in for a movie, they were trying to make it like a big deal. Because you had around the same time, like the Aladdin and Lion King games, like Disney was able to make the tie-in video game have prestige to it, like releasing them around the same time and having like them being able to be representations of the movie in a video game form with like the animation and the graphics being very on par and doing big business. You know, it would make sense. I mean, that's why there's like a True Lies game. There's all those Terminator games and Demolition Man. So there was the version that was on the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis,
and Sega CD, I believe.
Yeah, no Game Gear port, unfortunately. True Lies has a Game Gear port. But I played a little bit of the Genesis version of Demolition Man. It has not been requested for the stream yet, so if you want me to play on stream, let me know. And it's honestly the Genesis version. It's not bad. It's not bad. It reminds me of the Sega CD Terminator game. It kind of has a similar vibe to it. I don't think it was the same dev team, but it has a very similar style to it. I mean, for a game published by Acclaim, it's a lot better than it has any right to be.
Yeah, the company that made that is a company called like Alexandria. I've never heard of anything they made before. I don't even they don't even have a Wikipedia page, so
yeah, so that kind of shows you. But there was that version, which is pretty solid. It's a forgotten game of that era, which I get why, but it's not bad.
Ironically, that was made by Virgin, the Terminator Sega CD game.
Ah, yeah, which is a great game. But Virgin, instead, they made the 3DO version, which they could have easily had just done the 16-bit version, but added in, like, say, FM cutscenes between everything, right? Like, that's what they, like the Terminator game on Sega CD, that's what it is. It's a 2D action game that has, like, bad FMV from the movies kind of spliced in, right? Like, just bad in terms of the quality. This is a completely different beast. This feels like they're really trying to push the idea of the game where you play the movie. Because that's what Demolition Man on 3DO is.
The way this is a bit of this isn't a perfect comparison, but the way I thought of this is like Jurassic Park Interactive if it was better thought out and a bit more consistent, I guess you could say.
Jurassic Park Interactive just felt like a cheap, quick cash-in on the franchise, where it feels like the 3DO version of Demolition Man is actually trying to be like, it felt like this was given the same kind of care that the movie was, you know, and maybe it was almost an experiment of, let's see what happens if we try to make a video game like tie-in that is very close to like interacting with the movie, because we have a system that can pull it off. And because I mean, they like Sly and Wesley Snipes both appear in this game, like making new footage to kind of splice in, because you have the FMVs from the movie, which actually are like decent quality.
3DO had surprisingly decent FMVs for the time.
Yeah, but some games have been better than others. I think this game might be the best FMVs we've seen in terms of like the video quality.
It's either this or like Wing Commander.
Yeah, like they're both really, really well done. And like this is just like splicing in a lot of the movie scenes in there, but like it feels like they went out of their way to be sure they were like really solid quality, and they are. And then they splice them in within the new footage, of say Sylvester Stallone, Wesley Snipes. I think even Jesse Ventura shows up as
Yes.
one of the henchmen in those levels. Which because he has like a random appearance in this movie.
Mm.
Like when Wesley goes down into the sewers to take out like Edgar Friendly and the underground people, like Jesse Ventura just shows up and he doesn't ever really say anything. He does shoot the like the leader,
Mm.
so that's cool. That was a weird appearance from him in this movie.
You know what I found
Um,
really interesting?
what's
They
that?
get, they had the budget to get Stallone and Snipes. They had like the full on like big production soundtrack, but they couldn't get the rights to the sets because you'll notice right away like a lot of the FMVs, the ones made for the game, are very clearly green screened,
Yeah,
which
but I think that was planned.
probably it doesn't look bad. I mean, for 90s standards, it doesn't look bad. I mean, nowadays it looks cheesy as fuck, but I kind of like that. So
Yeah. Well, I think how it is that like film sets are never really preserved. Like they're just kind
no,
of destroyed and they move on to the next one. So my
depends
guess
on
is
the show, honestly.
yeah. Yeah, but my guess is that's probably what happened here.
The
Cuz the movie came out in October 8th, 1993 and then this came out sometime in 1995.
Yeah.
So even if they were working on it roughly at the same time, my guess is they probably weren't able to like take advantage of say the film sets because you never know like the budget and the time constraints they were on like actually making the movie,
Hmm,
and then they probably had to go back afterwards. Like it's different from say like the Lion King game where that was kind of being made at the same time as the movie.
true.
So that's why I was able to come out so close to the movie's release. The on Genesis, Super Nintendo, the Game Gear, and other consoles, right?
Hmm,
Whereas I think this doesn't have that same luxury to it because it's a live action thing. But
hmm.
you can tell they really tried to make it as close as they could.
Yeah.
And I think they did a
Oh yeah.
pretty good job with it. Like
The other thing that I noticed right away that like really gave me a great appreciation for the effort at the very least was you watch Stallone and Snipes like throughout this thing. They legitimately look like they're having a great time, like hamming it up, like just getting into it. Like there were a few points where I thought Stallone was gonna like break out into laughter just at what he was doing.
yeah,
Um,
because Snipes is just being how he was in the movie, which is like a very over the top, like kind of like a Joker esque type character, where it's like he just likes to cause chaos and destruction. That's
oh
really like
yeah,
that's really the only character development we have with the Simon Phoenix. Like if this movie was made now, they would have him as like some like tragic hero or whatever, or some tragic villain or whatever. And it's like fuck that. He just likes to cause chaos. And I guess a fun fact is his haircut in the movie inspired Dennis Rodman to have his hair the exact same way at the time, which is funny because as soon as the filming was done, Wesley shaved it off because he hated it.
yeah. I can imagine. I mean, I look at that and I go, yeah, I
Yeah.
would want that off too.
Stupid. Yeah. So
Like one of my favorites is because of the green screen, a lot of the scenes are very clearly you can tell if you're watching closely. Like I love the scenes where Stallone's running because you can tell he's clearly just running in place.
yeah, he's just
It's
jogging. Yeah,
it's great.
well, I think nowadays when they do green screen and it's running, they just put him on like a green treadmill and just have him run so it looks cleaner. They probably didn't have that technology at the time, or maybe they just weren't thinking about it at the time. I mean, the treadmills existed in 1994, but like,
They did, but considering Virgin at the time, I guarantee you they kind of just were like, yeah, good enough.
yeah, and it's funny to see him, yeah, like fake run, and and you can tell like Sly. It doesn't look like he's half-assing it. Like
No, he looks like he's legitimately
he,
having a good time.
yeah, like he's like, yeah, let's make this work. And like, I think Wesley's having a great time per usual.
They definitely
So
don't feel like they're phoning it in.
no, not at all. And yeah, and as you said, they were able to get the soundtrack from the movie, which is really cool.
The
And it does a
original
good. And it
songs,
no, go ahead.
the original songs were actually supposedly composed because we've learned a bit about the guy by Tommy Tallarico. So
Yeah, who was also on the Terminator Sega CD game.
hmm,
Um,
I think he worked for Virgin at the time.
yeah, I think he did. Um, well, he was also involved, I believe, in the Aladdin game as well.
Hmm,
Yeah, I think he did the soundtrack for that.
it's all
So,
making sense.
but anyways, so it's weird because we all associate this as a 3DO game because it only ever released on the 3DO, but it was planned to be on the Jaguar CD and the PlayStation. but those
Yeah.
fell through. My guess, the Jaguar CD version fell through because it was the Jaguar CD, and probably the PlayStation one, it fell through because even though Demolition Man was a big success at the time, it didn't have that kind of tail that like some other action movies would have had at the time. You know what I mean? Like it did really well, and I think it has more reverence for it now. But I honestly did not learn about the movie or even this game until the Spoonie review, because Spoonie reviewed this game many years ago, and that's how I know this is from that. And I even rewatched that review, and it's still a solid review from him. And yeah, and it's a lot of what he says is pretty accurate to the game itself, because like the production value is very high, and it's a very ambitious game. I don't know if it ever necessarily really hits at what it's trying to do, but it's definitely a memorable experience.
The way I kind of described this game while playing it was, it is very much a jack of all trades, but a master of none. Like, it does everything very well in the sense that it's playable, but there are much better representations of all the different play styles it's trying to do on the system, is the way I kind of put it.
Yeah, it's a very early example of a game trying to have like a cinematic presentation to it. And we've played some other games on the system that have attempted the same thing, but I think we can say this is one of the best representations of that. And it almost feels like this was meant to be a marquee title for the 3DO, because it feels like this was a big deal for the console, and they were going to really try to push this as like almost like a killer app type of thing, especially because the other versions didn't really happen. And I don't know if it ever really was going to be that, but I think it does an okay job at that, I'd say.
It definitely, it's ambitious in the sense that they really tried in everything. I can't 100% say it succeeded in every aspect, but it also didn't really fail.
No.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, so there are 4 different types of genres here. There is like light gun, like gallery gun type shooting levels.
Very close to, say, Area 51.
Yes.
That's like kind of the closest similarity I can think of.
Yeah, and the game apparently does support the light gun, but I don't have the light gun. I don't think you have the light gun either.
Yeah, it doesn't work on modern TVs regardless either way, but
exactly.
For the time.
Yeah, it was probably cool. But we have those. We have a couple one-on-one fighting segments, which feel, well, we'll get to them. There are 2 just straight up first-person shooter levels, and then there is 1 like driving stage, and it all covers like the main bits in the movie. So like the opening scene in Dystopian Future of 1996, where Stallone goes into the building to get snipes, and he has the hostages, and the whole thing blows up. Like you get that whole sequence. And then they give you a nice long cutscene of Spartan and Phoenix going under cryo freezing. And then we have to do a big cut because there's a lot of dialogue at that point to when Spartan is unthawed and then goes to the museum. And then there's that segment. And then it cuts to, I believe, when they go down into the sewers. And then when they come out of the sewers and chase him down. And then it ends in the cryo prison. So you get all the main action set pieces. The only things that are churnicated are like the excess dialogue scenes, like establishing the future characters, the Taco Bell scene. Sadly, there's no scene in the Taco Bell stuff. The VR sex scene is cut. Damn it. Which is a weird scene. It's like, if y'all haven't seen it, please, like, if you need to see a scene from this, see that, because it is very interesting.
It's like Ready Player One before Ready Player One, in a sense.
Yeah, and sort of like the interactions around that whole scene as well. It feels a little too close to home in some ways, but that is with that. So you get all the main bits, and so the shooting segments, I think we can agree, are probably the best.
They are the best. I will say, I wish I had the light gun, because I would love to try out the light gun on these scenes.
Yeah, it would have been no time crisis, but I think it would have done better justice to these scenes. But like playing them with just the standard D-pad isn't really that bad.
It's not bad. It's definitely better than.
If you get really good, you can like 100%, like get 100% accuracy.
Oh yeah,
because every enemy goes down in one hit. So if you memorize the scene, you can very easily just easily
Yeah.
just time where your bullets are going to go. But it does give you some bullshit later on.
Oh yeah. The one criticism I have for this game is it does not explain things well all the time.
No. It doesn't explain anything in terms of like the controls. Like considering it's jumping around all these genres, you think it would try to be a little bit more beginner friendly in certain circumstances, but it never really is.
There's
Like
a,
at all.
a specific
Like the shooter segments, I think do a decent job because like the first one is like really, really easy. And you can just kind of figure it out. Like there's
yeah.
definitely a game if you've been playing video games, you can kind of figure it out. But if you don't know what you're doing, you're gonna be completely fucked here.
Oh, did you mess around with the difficulty settings?
I did. As far
Did
as I
you
know, all they do is they change the amount of lives and continues you have.
did you get the awesome like dialogue options that pop up?
Oh, when you die?
Well, when you choose your
Oh,
difficulty,
yeah. Oh,
like
I forgot to
when
mention there's a lot of like they got Stallone to talk.
oh
And he
yeah,
talks a lot.
like
Um
when you
when you
pick
cha-
challenging modes, he goes like, "Oh, what are you trying to do? Replace me?"
and then when you go easy, he's just like, you suck.
Yeah, no, it's just like it's not even like a comical one. It's just straight up him going, "You suck."
Suck.
In
And
the
then you
Stallone
and then
voice.
you do normal and he's like, yeah.
Yeah,
It's great. Yeah, you get like the continues, and when if you choose to continue, they just have a clip of Wesley from the movie when he goes, "Oh, I'm so scared." But then
yeah,
if you game over, they got Stallone to say a bunch of random things to you at game over. The Spoonie video is a good example where you see a bunch of random ones where like there's a quote from the movie where he does the Luke Skywalker use the Force. Like that's a quote from the movie
mhm,
that he quotes Star Wars of these people. And then like the one where he's like, good, but I would say it's horrible yet terrible, ugly
yeah.
yet disgusting. You suck. Like all the random. There's a couple of other random ones in there, but those are very entertaining.
I miss the old days of gaming where whenever you lost, the game would shit talk you.
Yeah, and then it's like, and then when you leave, it's like the film just kind of splits, like it melts, and then you just
Oh
hear
yeah,
people laughing at you. It's
yeah.
like it is a weird experience, but it kind of adds to the
It
vibe of the game overall.
it takes full advantage of what the 3DO has to offer, and I really kind of like that.
It's one of the few games we've played that does kind of embrace everything
Oh yeah,
about the 3DO, and I think it's one of the few that does like a pretty decent job at it. Even if the core game isn't all that great, there's so much around it that is like really cool that it kind of makes worth dealing with all of it. Because yeah, the game I think is way too hard.
it's very thank God the password system is very exploitable. Like the game doesn't have so it's weird. The system memory will save your high scores, but it doesn't save your progress. Instead, it gives you passwords,
Yeah.
which is okay, sure. It's one of those weird things that I mean, in hindsight, it's actually kind of nice because you can skip levels, but I
Yes,
just
because
find it weird.
there's a very nice level select code.
Mm,
So it's like when you start the first level, if you do a specific button combination, then you just have an option to go to whatever level basically whenever. Which I was able to beat the first two chapters raw,
mm,
because like the light gun stages, once you play them enough, you kind of learn where everything is and the patterns, which isn't really too bad. It's the fighting sequences that are just the fucking worst
they are.
because they're ridiculously the game grinds to a halt, and I mean like frame rate wise. It is so slow, the inputs are super fucking delayed, and it's trying to have like a Mortal Kombat style like fighting control, but it's not very intuitive. And I feel like the game much like Mortal Kombat, I feel like the game reads your inputs. So you can't even really it's hard to exploit, but even if you try to mix it up, it's tough. I was able to beat him a couple times bare,
You know what my
but it takes a lot of trial and error. Like what I found worked the best was I would like creep up to him as best as I could, just do a normal kick, like one or two, and then either do a sweep or an
Mhm.
uppercut.
Yeah,
And when I would just repeat that, I would block as well. Cause I think it's if you time the blocks, you can do a counter attack, which is feasible, but a purely defensive strategy isn't gonna work. So basically the best thing is just like when you get in close, just hold like your standard block. So there's a good chance he'll just do like one that with that, and then you can do your attack pattern.
Mm.
It's not 100%, but it had the highest success rate of all the fighting sequences.
Yeah, the way I best describe it is, it's like you're playing a more streamlined version of Mortal Kombat without any of the finesse that makes Mortal Kombat fun.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, there's no special moves, there's no combos, but again, it's like the really bad controls and the really bad input delay makes it just not entertaining at all.
You know what I noticed? The first one with the fire background significantly controlled worse than the later ones. I
Yes,
am
absolutely.
convinced the 3DO couldn't handle the fire effect. That is my theory.
Yeah, you're probably right, because that one it's not the hardest, but it's the second hardest one. Like, weirdly enough, the easiest one is the one in the museum. Or the the cryo prison one was the final fight scene was the easy. I beat it first try.
It was weird because I was like, oh my God, these are terrible. And then I went to the later ones. I'm like, oh, they're actually not as bad as I remember. And I had to go back and I'm like, I think it's the fire effect that's causing this, because it was like,
It had to be, yeah, because there's a lot going on in that. Like, because the scene in the movie is like a really cool fight scene, but like here, it just it's not the same. And yeah, it's like it's a neat idea, but it just really doesn't figure itself out. And
ironically, the closest other thing on 3DO to this is Way of the Warrior, and I'm not sure if it's better or not.
It's better than Way of the Warrior. You're not going to get me to say anything nice about that game. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. Anyways, I mean, if Way of the Warrior had Wesley Snipes and Sylvester Stallone taking turns kneeing each other in the nads, then yeah. But
no, it's just got Jason Rubin and his friends filming a porno.
Yeah, but there's one fight scene that coalesces with the driving, because there's that scene where they drive like the Oldsmobile to capture to get after Simon Phoenix in the futuristic police car, and then they meet up and then they fight on the cars, right? Like in the movie, like really cool scene. And here they try to replicate that. So the driving sequence is so it's not great.
I was trying to think of a comparison, like, because we've played, so ironically, driving games are one of the things we've played quite a few of on 3DO, and we've played some really good ones and we've played some bad ones. I found this closer to, like, say, Crash and Burn than any of the EA games we've played.
Yeah, there's more going on in Crash and Burn, but to be fair, this is just like you're driving in a straight line. You're just using the shoulder buttons to avoid traffic. And you're just trying to catch up to Simon before your gas runs out. Why is there a gas meter? I have no fucking idea. So it doesn't play into the movie at all.
So I did notice this is something that's very easy to miss. On some of the paths, there are these really specific like lanes that you can travel in, and certain ones will speed your car up, but the other ones replenish your gas, and it's very easy to miss those.
Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, so see, I had to look it up because I couldn't fucking do it, and I was like, "What?" I'm like, "I don't get it. What am I missing here?" And someone pointed out, "It's like certain paths will replenish your gas," and I was like, "Oh, you kind of have to choose between speed or gas."
So that is weird, but if you're able to make it to Simon before your gas runs out and you die, you just start right back at that fight scene and you have full gas. So. But the fight scene with the two cars is easily the worst one. It's fucking atrocious because you can't hop between the cars. So you're just at the edge of your car and he's at the edge of his car, right? And in the Spoonie video, you see him. It's like he just constantly is sweeping the leg and it's working. I tried that and it worked about half the time. I was never able to beat this fight. And that was me trying like all the different strategies I had. It was just for some reason this one was just the hardest one, and I just couldn't get it, which really pissed me off. But thankfully, with that level select code, I was able to jump around, so I could actually see everything, which was really nice. But we have the two first-person shooter segments. So now, very recently, we played a game called Escape from Monster Manor, which this game makes like fucking PO look like Escape from Monster Manor.
Yeah. I think that when I was playing this, I was like, oh, I wish we didn't just play that, because it makes we've essentially seen like perfection of a first person shooter on the 3DO with Monster Manor and BioFury to an extent as well. Like, I
Yeah.
shout out to Retro Love Letter. He made a really awesome engine.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too.
Because we've already experienced those, when I got to these, I was just like, it's fine, but it's also like the most bare bones generic Wolfenstein style first person shooter ever.
The problem I had with it was, I mean, it's funny to like, you don't have to worry about ammo anymore, or like you never had to worry about ammo, but like reloading, and all the enemies go down in one hit, so you can like hide behind a corner and just like knock out like dozens of enemies just by doing nothing. It's kind of entertaining. The issues come in with like the little radar that they give you. You can barely fucking see anything on it, and it doesn't give you like a map or sort of any indication, because both the sewer and the cryo prison are complete mazes where the whole goal is to try to get to the end of the maze. But Simon Phoenix is in that maze, and you're not supposed to fight him, even though you're chasing him, which doesn't make any sense.
That threw me off. I tried killing him, and you can't kill him. He's invincible.
Exactly. So the best strategy I found was, when you find Simon, just kind of hang behind him and just follow him.
Oh yeah, that's
because he's heading toward the exit anyways. So yeah, with it being like these like dark mazes where you can't really see anything, there's no real discernible markers, there's no way to really know where you are other than just like occasionally seeing different enemies or whatever. It's so easy to get lost, and they're just so poorly designed. Like, it's easily the worst part of the game. Like, you don't control very well at all, and it's just a really lazy, bad like Wolfenstein 3D thing that just never really makes itself work. And it could have just been my TV, but they were way too fucking dark. I couldn't see shit half the time.
Yeah, I cranked up the brightness a little bit when I was playing.
Yeah, well, my TV, it's kind of weird with that, with the brightness, so I couldn't just like crank it up, but it was horrible. But with the sewers, if you find Simon, hang behind him, occasionally shoot people when you have to, you'll eventually find the exit, and he'll go through it first, but you'll be fine. You can just go right through and be fine. And the crowd prison was basically the same thing, but it's a bit longer and a little bit more annoying.
You know what I noticed? Because I compared this to Jurassic Park Interactive. Ironically, the weakest aspect of both is the first-person shooter segments.
Yeah. But at least with this one, it was more entertaining than the one in Jurassic Park Interactive. Like that
one was just
that was just a fail, like a great idea that completely failed.
That was just a straight line with a dinosaur that would jump scare you every now and then.
Yeah, whereas this was just like an average idea that just never really works. It's not like being able to mow down henchmen like it's nothing kind of makes up for it, because that's fun. But it's just, again, without the level select code, I never would have saw everything in this game, because the difficulty curve is all over the place. You know, some like hell, even in the museum, right? When you're chasing after Simon, you know, to quote the Spoonie movie, it's this little game called "What the fuck am I supposed to shoot?" You know, where it's like at first he's hiding behind like the TNT. It's like, oh yeah, shoot the TNT. And then the second point, he starts controlling a tank, and then you got to shoot the tank, but you got to keep shooting the tank, because he'll eventually move halfway and start chucking grenades, but you still have to be shooting the tank, even though the tank doesn't work anymore. And then when he gets behind the machine gun or whatever, you try shooting all that stuff, it doesn't work. You have to shoot the bomb that's like with the plane, that's like right there. Like the bomb will drop when he takes over for some reason. You shoot that to blow it up, and then that scares him off, which doesn't make any goddamn sense.
Yeah.
And then he hides behind the little podium, right? The little information thing, where like in the movie, Stallone sees the sort of stalactite type lighting that you just shoot that and it breaks the glass, right? You're supposed to do that, but you have to shoot the thing he's hiding behind to hit the control panel so it can lower far enough for you to shoot it. Which is just such a video game ass way of extending a movie scene, you know?
Yeah.
But it's like, come on, guys. Come on.
It's really one of those things where it's kind of like, it's not bad, but it is a little kind of a
convoluted.
Yeah.
It's a bit convoluted. Yes. So, and then when you beat the game, there's also a bunch of different things of Stallone congratulating you for beating the game, which is pretty cool. It's weird it has like a score, like a high score system. It must have just been left over, because it's like, this isn't an arcade game.
High score
it has arcade ideas, but
yeah, the score systems in games took a while to finally be phased out.
Yeah, and do you get extra lives at a certain point? Because I never got that. I never
You
got that many points.
you get continues. I know that. I don't think you get lives per se.
Okay.
I don't even think you get. I don't even think they're related to the points. I think you just have to find them in the shooter segments.
Okay. Interesting.
The
I did
the
not know that.
the light gun shooter segments. That is because I found a few by just shooting stuff.
Okay. Interesting.
But yeah, that's pretty much the entire game.
Yeah, pretty much. If I remember correctly, this won the 3DO Magazine Award for Best Design.
This game got a lot of praise because I believe review wise, I was looking at a few reviews. Most people praised it, like they thought it was like a really like impressive game. The fighting sections were heavily criticized, which I mean, fair enough. Um, Next Generation gave it the worst review I saw, which was 2 out of 5 stars. And they basically just complained that like nothing was really fully realized and that it was just kind of like a mediocre fest all around, which I just think they didn't like it.
I mean, I kind of agree. It definitely is trying too much when
Mm,
it really should have just tried to. It could have just been like, say, like the Genesis game, where it was just like a run and gun shooter, and it just does that one thing pretty well. Well, there's the run and gun shooter. There's also like overhead shooting segments in that game, which I do not like at all. They're kind of bad. But the side scrolling stuff I thought was solid.
yeah. Like I think what helps this game the most is like the sheer amount of effort that was put into just making it a cohesive product.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like it's one of those where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Really,
Mm,
like taking it as a complete package. It is a very unique experience that I don't think I've ever really had before. Like a
mm,
game that's trying really hard to be the movie in as like a cutting edge 1995 way of trying to be like the movie. You know what I mean?
mm.
Whereas if they did this now, it would be something completely different.
Oh yeah.
You know, better
Like
like in a way, like say like Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, right? Like it's not really a movie tie-in, but it's a tie-in to like a movie franchise, and it's going to be kind of its own thing. But it's
mm,
probably going to be very cinematic, right?
oh yeah.
But that's handled in a much different way than say this bad boy is. But I think they're both trying to be the same thing, which is sort of like a marquee like IP that a system can kind of hang its hat on.
Oh yeah.
No pun intended.
Um yeah, other than that though, I was looking at like production, like obviously we talked about Tommy Tallarico did the soundtrack. I don't really recognize anyone else. It feels like excuse me. It was just kind of the standard fare over at a version at the time.
Yeah, pretty much. Nobody else stands out that much. Some of those guys are still in the industry doing stuff, but you can
Mm.
find that out if you look at Moby Games.
Oh
You can
yeah.
find all that stuff out.
Um yeah, other than that though, I love the full motion video really carries this game. Like I feel like if the FMV sequences and like the whole like cinematic production wasn't here, it would probably I think opinions wouldn't be exactly the same. I feel like honestly, like I feel like this is one of those games that inherently I feel like has just gotten better with age because that whole style has become kind of like nostalgic in this modern day.
Yeah, I would agree. Like in a lot of ways, the 16-bit version of this game is the better game,
Mm,
but I think this is the more unique experience. And I think that's what people like about this is that it's a very unique, interesting way of making a movie tie-in game. You know what I
mm.
mean? And it feels like almost the culmination of all those FMV games around this time that were trying to be a cinematic experience. And this one just says, oh, well, we'll just base this on an actual movie that came out so it can be comparable. And I think it does a pretty decent job of being that experience, like better than some of the others we've played and some of the others we will play. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it is unique, and it's in a weird way one of the games for the 3DO that is still unique to it, that if you get a system and want to play the games for it, it's kind of one you have to check out.
Yeah, and I that actually is a perfect segue. Must play, okay, stay away. I'm gonna say must play.
I'm gonna say it's probably the worst game in the must play section. Like
Well,
as a game, it's not all that great, but it absolutely is a must play because if you are interested in the 3DO at all, this is definitely one of the handful of titles that needs to be in your collection.
I was gonna say it's the best game it's the worst game in the must play segment aside from Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, because that one's
Does Plumbers even count as a game though?
it's a 3DO experience,
Yeah, exactly.
which I think this game kind of is as well. Although this is more of a game.
Yeah, yeah, and this has a much better production value and actually has fucking FMV in it and and all that. But yeah, it's not the best game in the world. Like if we were to do the tier listing, I'd probably throw it maybe in like a B.
Yeah,
But
B
it
or
is
high
a
C.
yeah, but it is an absolute must play. It is well worth it's well worth hunting down. It's a bit expensive these days on 3DO. This guy cost me it was like $60 or something like that. But
Yeah,
I don't regret the purchase at all.
the loose disc jewel case variant about 25 around what I paid. So if you
That's
don't
not
care,
bad.
if you don't care about the long box, it's not too bad.
Yeah, it has been going up recently. At least it costs. I've seen them cost more than when I bought mine. I don't know when I bought mine, like a year ago, maybe.
I know it was one of
I'd
the
have to look
first ones you
through.
got.
Well, it was one that when we started this, I'm like, we have to do this. Like, this is one I was pushing for us to review, like for a long time. So,
Hmm.
because I'd always known it from the Spoonie video, and that was like one of my early interactions with the 3DO itself. So once we got to this, I'm like, oh, I have to kind of fulfill this part. This thing I always wanted to know, which was, this game was it worth my time? Because Spoonie was kind of mean to it. I get why, but if you're looking to get into the 3DO, it definitely is worth your time.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Oh,
I actually what I see what I paid for it. It's about what it goes for nowadays. So
but on that note, what should we play next time?
well, I was pushing for this one. So why don't you pick one that you really want us to play?
Okay. So I know you don't own this one yet. So I know I'm not gonna force you to pick it up, but I kind of want to do Blade Force.
Blade Force. Yeah, let's do Blade Force.
Okay. Blade Force, I'm looking forward to because it is one of the ones that tries to actually showcase 3DO 3D. Whether it did it well or not, we'll wait for the episode to describe. But
I don't even think I've even seen this game.
it's something. It's one of the first 3DO games I bought, specifically because I wanted to actually see 3DO showcase 3D. Um, but yeah, Blade Force is. I think let's do Blade Force.
Let's do it.
All right. And on that note, everybody, once again, thank you for joining us on the 3DO Experience. The 3DO Experience can be found on all the major podcasting platforms. And be sure to check us out over on the Superpod Network. That is superpodnetwork.com. It is an awesome site where you can find a whole bunch of different podcasts, videos, blogs, all sorts of fun stuff, occasional collaborations between all the shows. And you can find great other creators like Superpod Saga, Super Ghost Radio, Retro Rehab, a novel console, Tommy's Video Game Ride Along, Fine Time, The Elder Trolls, Friday Night Gamecast, Remember 64, Bar Silence, Gaming Together, and those three GNC shows. You know those. But on another note, you're streaming on Thursday?
Oh yes, yes. I streamed last Thursday. People seem to have a good time, and thankfully, with my new job, I'm back in full force. So we're doing it. The VOD's been doing surprisingly well on YouTube. I think it's almost at like 40 views now, which is pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah. So I don't know what gave it the big boost, but thanks everybody for watching it, and maybe you should come into the stream and watch me play. I'll be Thursday at 7 p.m. I have the next set of games picked up. Some I did pick a couple notable ones. So and everybody, please keep sending me the requests. I want to see more games in the list because a lot of the games that have been requested are like big names, You know, like obviously I've had all the Streets of Rage games put in there, but it's like I'm trying to hold off on doing some of the big ones, you know?
Like some of the obscure shit.
Yeah. I want to play the weirder. Recommend me the weirder shit, god damn it. Like a friend of mine did recommend some lesser known stuff. So that'll be cool. One game I'm really looking forward to playing, but I'm waiting on that one. But yeah, next week should be, or this week should be some a nice variety of stuff. So, but yeah, we should get that going.
Nice. And you can find that down at the link below, twitch.tv/Thrack94. And if you'd like to find the previous VODs, you can either go to Thrack's YouTube channel or on the GNC Podcast Studios Network channel. There is now a playlist of all of Thrack's streams right down below underneath the partner collaboration works sub playlist folder thing. YouTube channels are weird now, but
yep. But if you want to keep up with the VODs, subscribe, hit the bell, do all that bullshit, so that you can see them when they come up. Usually they're up. Like I finish up a stream, and then the first thing I do is download the VOD, do a little bit of editing, and then throw it in there. So usually by Friday it's up. So you don't have to wait too much longer.
Nice. But anyways, guys, on that note, we will see you all later.
Bye-bye.